And I see so many people who are stuck doing the same things over and over, and that's why they're not moving forward. And that's why when I had the idea for the book, it was all about helping people give up on everything that's actually holding them back and stopping them from living the life that they want. Because I discovered that there's 7 mental blocks that in one way or another, every single one of us deals with that is holding us back and keeping us stuck in our own head. So maybe you should give up. It's not about giving up on your goals and dreams. It's about giving up on everything that's stopping you from actually achieving them.
Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about why we sabotage ourselves and how to get out of our own way. I'm delighted to welcome Byron Morrison. Byron is a mindset and performance coach as well as a best-selling author. His latest book is called Maybe You Should Give Up: 7 Ways to Get Out of Your Own Way and Take Control of Your Life. You can reach Byron and learn more about his latest book on his website, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Welcome, Byron. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to be on.
I am too, and I am just intrigued by the title of your book. And I love the sound of let's just give up, because you know what? That's what we feel like doing anyway. But I don't think that what you are thinking that they should give up is necessarily the same thing as what someone, when they first hear it, is thinking what they should give up. So what do you think we should give up?
So that's the reaction is the exact reason why I went with the title of the book, because when people first hear it, they're like, but I don't want to give up. And it's just like all of the self-help and personal development world is ingrained with us in this message that if you quit or you change what you're doing, you're a failure. And I see so many people who are stuck doing the same things over and over, and that's why they're not moving forward. And that's why when I had the idea for the book, it was all about helping people give up on everything that's actually holding them back and stopping them from living the life that they want. Because I discovered that there's 7 mental blocks that in one way or another, every single one of us deals with that is holding us back and keeping us stuck in our own head. So maybe you should give up. It's not about giving up on your goals and dreams. It's about giving up on everything that's stopping you from actually achieving them.
I love that. Let's give up on what's holding us back. And it's so fascinating that usually the number one thing that holds us back is us. And that means that we have some power and some control in making a change in our lives so that we can move forward. So this absolutely delights me because it is so true. And I already love the way you've presented it. So I am excited to learn from you today. Is it okay if we walk through some of these, well, hopefully all, depending on the time, of these 7 things? What am I doing to get in my way? Where am I getting in my way?
Yeah, 100%. Like, the first 2 I'd love to break down with you are actually the first 2 chapters of the book.
Yes, please.
Because when I was mapping it out, I structured it in a way that I was like, every single one of us needs to break through these 7 barriers. But the first 2 are the biggest ones I'm seeing people getting stuck in. So chapter 1 is all about breaking and giving up on the idea of reacting to the world around you. Because most people live their life in a reactive state where things are happening to them, they're dealing with challenges, and they're driven by emotion. But what listeners need to understand is there's a really big difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is impulsive. It's driven by emotion, whereas a response is calculated and controlled. And this is why if you're constantly in that high stress state, there's no way that you could show up as your best self. So it's all about getting you to recognize that you're never going to be in complete control of what's going on around you, but you can always control how you choose to respond to it. And that in itself is incredibly empowering. Because we all have problems, we all have challenges, we all have things going wrong in our life. And when we're always living in the past or focusing on problems, that stops us from actually taking action on what we need to do to move forward. So until we give up on that and we really start shifting to that state of response, we're always going to stay stuck. And that's why for a lot of people, they struggle following through.
That is amazing. So now I'm thinking of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and how we have that power to choose our response. And when we're in that reactive, just knee-jerk mode, which comes so naturally, it doesn't usually lead us to a good place. So if I'm trying to be responsive rather than reactive, is it just, are you thinking of kind of removing the emotion from it and taking a step back? Or can you give me maybe, there's the ideal, and then how do I do it? Is there any
Yeah.
action steps or something I can
So,
do?
so the way of doing this is not about making you immune to your emotions. So let me give you a real world example and then
Yes,
I'll
please.
explain it to you. So a few months ago, I was on a train and there was this group of kids who were sat across from me and they were screaming and shouting. And I was just on the edge of my seat. And to be honest, I was getting incredibly annoyed. I was like, why will they not just shut up? And that was when I realized that they weren't making me annoyed. I was choosing to get annoyed by what they were doing. I was so focused on the problem that I become blinded to the fact that there were so many solutions to my problem. I could have looked out the window. I could have turned up my music. I could have focused on my work. I could have even moved seat. But because I was just stuck in that reactive place, that was how it was just controlling me in the way that I felt. It was only when I recognized that and I brought it into my awareness and I stopped and I mentally took a step back. I was like, okay, what is going on here? Why am I feeling this way? What's causing this emotional reaction? That was how I could then give up on it. I could be like, okay, how do I shift my response? So like I said, this is not about making you immune to your emotions. You're only human, but instead of allowing them to spiral and take over, it's about getting you to develop the awareness of, okay, I'm having a reaction here. Let me slow down, process it. And then it's always about shifting your focus to what you do about it going forward. Because going back to what I said before, you're never going to be in complete control, but you can always control your response. But you can't do that until you become aware of it.
That is so amazing. And if we would do this one step, it would change the world. Because our knee-jerk reaction, again, is why won't those kids shut up? They are the problem and they need to fix it. And that leaves me powerless unless I have the, ability to kick them off the train or whatever. But when we switch it around and say, well, what can I do about it so that their actions are not harming me, then we have a measure of control. And I think that's so huge. Right now, the world is a little bit crazy, where there's so many things that we're not in control of. And some people feel like they have no control at all. And to remind us that we have some control is so empowering. Wow, beautiful, and so relevant. Oh, love it.
Yeah. Well, this is why this is the first thing we build on. And that's what, like you said, it's all about empowering you, because this is applicable to every area of your life. Another example is I was working with a client earlier this week, and he had checked in with me saying that a member of his team, they had a mistake with an order. So basically they got all this marketing material printed. It was the wrong design. It was a bit of a catastrophe. And the person came to him like really emotional and on edge. And he was just like, oh, that's fine. What's happened? Okay, what do we do to fix it? Whereas in the past, he would have spiraled. He would have just been focused so much on the problem. But because he's developed this way of thinking now, he was just focusing on solutions. He was like, there's literally no point in dwelling on this. No amount of me getting angry or frustrated is going to change it. And that's why, for me, this is the first thing that we have to master, because it's all about, like I said, just going back to that solution mode. It's like, this is a problem. How do you move forward? But this is why most people get stuck, because something goes wrong and then they live in the past. They either beat themselves up, they dwell on it, they get consumed by all of this negative energy. And that is never going to serve you. So it's all about looking at, okay, how do you break free from that? And it all goes back to that focus of being like, okay, this is what's going on in the moment, and how can I empower myself to move on?
I love solution-based people, solution-based ideas, because that is how we solve problems. It's not by living in the problem. It's not by growing the problem. It's by finding solutions to the problem. Oh, wow. I am 100% on board so far. Love it. Are we ready to go on to the next step? Or are we still in the first one?
That builds us perfectly to step number 2, because now you're getting to that solution-based mindset. You know what you need to do, but then the next problem is actually doing it. And I found that at this point, from working with people in 15 different countries, I found that the biggest thing stopping people from following through with their goals or what they need to get done is fear. It's that sabotaging voice of, what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if I get rejected? We build up all of these mental stories in our head. And that's why a lot of people get stuck here, because they're their own worst enemy. They know what they need to do, but they just can't do it. And that's why the second thing that I believe we have to give up on is that fear of what could go wrong, worrying about what other people think, like all of those doubts that keep us paralyzed.
Wow. Okay. This is so huge, because it is our fear that holds us back. And our fear is part of our, it's part of our harm avoidance. It's part of our survival system. We're afraid so that we can stay alive. But it gets a little bit out of control. Not everything is going to kill me. If you choose not to like me, if you choose not to reject me, it's not actually going to kill me. It might hurt a little, but it's not actually going to kill me. That fear is so huge. It is amazing. How much that can stop us. I agree. Again, 100%.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there with the whole survival instinct. Because what anyone listening to this right now needs to understand is your brain has been programmed in a way that it wants to survive. It doesn't want to thrive. Its entire purpose is to create quantity of life. So that means it wants to keep everything the same types of relationships, the same amount of weight on your body, the same amount of happiness and joy. It wants to keep all these things consistent because that's when it knows what's going to happen. With all of your goals, your dreams, your aspirations, they're all new, meaning they bring with them an inherent risk. And that's why even though you may be unhappy in the situation you're in right now, you might be feeling stuck or frustrated. The reality is your brain takes comfort in it because it knows what's going to go on. And this is why whenever you start making changes, it fills your head with all of those doubts. What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? It wants to trip you up and keep you where you are. But what you need to understand is the life that you want to live is on the other side of that fear. And that's why you're never going to actually enter that new world and reality until you push yourself to face it. But if you still keep giving into all of those mental stories, which, like you said, you blow them out of proportion, a lot of the time you convince yourself they're worse than they are, you're never actually going to take control of the life that you want.
Isn't that the truth? And it goes back to that where you talked before about responding versus reacting. We have just our subconscious programs that just take care of everything. It just keeps us alive. It keeps us moving, but it keeps us in a cycle that is the same. And in order to do something different, it means we can't just run on the programs we have. We have to actually choose to do something different. We have to move our thought from the subconscious up to our conscious thinking. And that is, it can be scary for a lot of people because we have what is comfortable. So if I'm feeling fearful, again, I agree 100%, but I love action steps. Is there something I can do to help me get out of this place so that I am brave enough and courageous enough to take a step toward the unknown?
Yep. There's 2 action steps I love passing on to people. The first is you just need to take a moment to slow down and figure out what are you actually afraid of. Because a lot of the time you just have this fear. You're like, oh, what if I fail? Or what if all of these things? But you don't take the time to, on a deeper level, connect with where that fear is coming from. So you really need to ask yourself, going into the future, where is that fear actually coming from? What is it you're afraid is going to happen? And is it actually that big of a deal? Because going back to your subconscious, it blows it out of proportion. And a lot of the time when you can see that actually that's what you're afraid of, it's not actually that bad, it becomes so much easier to deal with. The second one, and probably one of my favorite ways to do it, is to tip the scale in the other direction. Because you've got a fear that something's going to go wrong. So that's stopping you from actually taking action. What you need to do is reframe it the other way of what are you going to miss out on if you don't actually follow through with that fear? Because that could be if I don't go for this, I'm going to reach the end of my days regretting that I didn't go after my goals. It could be that I'm going to regret that I didn't speak to that person. It could be a case of you don't take action in your business, you're not going to hit your revenue goals. Whatever it is, you have to make the pain of not making it happen more painful than the pain of what the fear is. Because suddenly then it's more fearful not to follow through. Then that pain of not taking action, it becomes so real that you're like, okay, I have to do this. Even though I may fail or it might go wrong or it might be painful, I have to push myself to face it.
Wow. And I use that analogy of the scale tipping all the time, but you've added something to it that's new to me and super, super exciting. I feel like we all want to change and we all want to stay the same. And we have to tip that scale so that we want to change more than we want to stay the same, or we're not going to do anything. And here you are cleverly building on our natural state of fear, because that comes so naturally. I'm afraid of this because I might miss out. but I'm afraid of this because I might miss out. And taking that very natural tendency for fear of missing something, and then using it in our favor. That's so clever. I'm thinking like martial arts where you use somebody's momentum against them to flip them over your shoulder. So you can take that fear and just work with it and flip it around. That is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. It's so empowering as well, because it's like, if you use like a really easy to follow example, like let's say someone needs to pick up the phone to call a potential client, but they're like, oh, what if I get that no? What if I get rejected? Like for a lot of people, they struggle with that.
Oh, yeah.
So you need to tip it the other way. Like, what are you going to miss out on by not actually doing that? What are you going to fall short of your revenue? Or you're not going to be able to provide for your family? Or you're not going to be able to build the business that you want? You've got to make it more painful not to do it. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't seem like that big a deal. And it's the same thinking if you want to go to that fitness class, if you want to put that video out there, you want to speak to that person, it's the same concept, regardless of the problem. You can just alter the pain that you relate to it.
We're going to work with our FOMO, the fear of missing out. We're going to use it in our favor. That is lovely. And then the first suggestion, which we skipped over because the second one was so exciting, is kind of verbalizing maybe. So let's say I'm afraid to talk to you because you might not like me, you might reject me. And so what am I really afraid of? And what is the result? The consequence is not that big of a deal. I mean, my life is going to go on. The sun's going to still rise. It's going to be okay. So recognizing what that is. So if we can work on our responses, and then if we can work on overcoming our fear, and you've given us some very concrete ways to do that, that is going to change everything. It almost sounds like the next 5 steps are, frosting on the cake, so to speak.
Yeah, that's 100% it. The analogy that I give in the book, it's basically, if you view the journey that you're on as climbing up the mountain, and you've got a backpack on, and in that bag, you've got a variety of different rocks, boulders, and pebbles that are weighing you down. So the first 2 that you need to let go of are reactiveness and fear. They're the big boulders that are keeping you stuck. As you take them out, you become lighter. Then the next one are the rocks. They're not as heavy, but they're still weighing you down. And the purpose of the book is going through these 7 different areas where you're letting each of these things go one by one until you're lighter and you can finally climb up the mountain. So it is one of those things that they're the big barriers. You knock those over, and then everything else is building on top.
That is a beautiful analogy. I love to have that visual picture of things. And one thing when you were talking about letting go of these rocks and letting go of these boulders, it reminds me that often we feel like life is supposed to be hard. It is supposed to be, if we work hard, if we do these hard things, then we're going to get the success. And it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to let go of some of those rocks so that we can be successful, don't you think?
Exactly. And that's a huge part of my message. It's just like so often we hold on to things that aren't serving us, that aren't giving us the happiness or the joy that we want, because we've convinced ourselves that the things we should be going after. And it's just very freeing, giving yourself permission that actually I can let this go. And it's just about allowing to someone to empower themselves, because a part of the reason why this happens is we live too much in the past or in the future. So we convince ourselves of the things that we've gone through or the things that we need to do. So we're never fully present in the moment. And as cheesy as it sounds, happiness doesn't come from the journey somewhere off in the future. Instead, it comes from the achievement somewhere off in the future. Instead, it comes from the journey, and the journey takes place in the present. And that's why I find that for so many of us, the reason why we get in our own way is because we're not being intentional with life. We're either worrying about problems that haven't happened yet, or we're focusing on the past and things that we can't change. And all of that takes us away from being in the very moment. And when we can give up on those 2 areas, that's when we can start actually just living a life on our terms, where we can be like, yes, I have problems. Yes, I have challenges. Yes, things have gone wrong, but it's part of who I am. It's part of where I'm going, and just embracing the good and the bad in life.
I love it. And as we are able to let go of the past and not worry about the future, that really empowers us to be happy today. Because I can say, these horrible things happened to me, And so I can't be happy because horrible things happen to me. And I haven't achieved what I want to yet. The things that I want aren't here yet, so I can't be happy. And when we can let go of that and say, here I am today, I'm happy.
Yep. Like, I love the way that you described it, and that's exactly where I'm going with this, because this is not about lowering your goals and your ambitions. Like, you still want to aim high, but you've also got to recognize that you're never going to get to where you want to be, because whatever goal or target you've set for yourself, as soon as you get close, that goal line's going to move, because it's the problem when you're someone with aspirations, you always want more. And this is why I think we're all guilty of saying that when we hit that next goal, then we'll take more time off, we'll spend more time with our family, we'll focus on our health. But that's what you said the time before and the time before that. And this is why it's all about learning to balance your goals and ambitions with slowing down and enjoying the process. Because if you're always putting your happiness in some future result, you're never going to feel like you're enough. Something is always going to be missing. So it's just all about empowering you to be like, do you know what? This is the moment, and this is what I'm going through, and just really embracing it fully.
I love that. And if that's okay, that reminds me of a story. My husband is a pilot. He was flying and he had a jump seater, so another pilot in the front who was just about ready to retire from Delta. And he said, now I'm going to start living the good life. And my husband looked at him, and he was old, and he was wrinkled, and he had age spots, and he'd lost his hair. And he thought, now I'm going to start living the good life? I don't want to wait until then to start living the good life. I am going to choose to be happy today and tomorrow and the next day. And I thought that was a very powerful moment for him to see someone who waited for the good life until he reached a certain goal for him, retirement, and it did not serve him. He missed out on a lot of joy.
I love that. And there's one thing I'd love to add to that, because I know from speaking to so many people from around the world that there'll be people who will listen to that story right now and their immediate thought will go to how much time they've wasted. It's just like, oh no, I've been doing this and tolerating this and putting up with all of this and I can't get that back. And this is why I really want to encourage anyone listening to this. Like, everything you've been through in your life has been leading up to this point right now. And you needed to go through that or to put up with all these things to push you to a point that you're ready to change. So there's no point you dwelling on the fact that you may have been in a situation where you're unhappy for years, or you might have been in a career or relationship, whatever it is that isn't fulfilling you. Again, going back to what I said before, you can't change the past. But if you're listening to this right now and you're like, do you know what, I need to start living, I need to make changes, then view today as the first day of the rest of your life. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter what you've done. You're never more than one decision away from a completely different life. And like your husband, like anyone listening to this can make a choice of being like, do you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to start prioritizing happiness and living for myself.
And that is so true. We don't want to give new information that gives someone more guilt about what didn't take place in the past. The message is the same. The past is done. The future hasn't happened yet. Let's choose today. And if it's okay, I would love to hear your story, because it sounds like you have some personal experience about that.
Yeah, so this is a big part of the reason why I wrote the book, because to be honest with you, for most of my life, I was my own worst enemy. Like, taking you back over 10 years, I was at a point in my life where I was overweight, I was burnt out, I was stuck in a job that was killing me, and every single day was just a battle to get through. And then my dad got cancer. And during his treatment, he had most of his bowel surgically removed, and he spent 25 days in ICU, most on life support and breathing through a tracheostomy. And luckily, he pulled through. It's something I'm eternally grateful for. But that, for me, was the wake-up call that I needed to change. I realized how much of my life I'd wasted just watching from the sidelines and not going after what I wanted. And I wish I could sit here and tell you that overnight, everything magically got better. But still, I wasn't following through. For the next couple of years, I would take one step forward and two step back. I would still get in my own way with my relationships, with my health, and my professional success. And it was only when I took the time to really stop and figure out, like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I not following through? I started studying psychology and mindset and behaviors and why we think the way that we do. And that was when I managed to really start shifting my subconscious and the way I felt about myself. It was only when I understood on a deeper level why I was actually sabotaging myself that I could break through it. So that was very much the transition period of my own life. It's why I then took everything I learned, went into my books. It's why I started a business helping people from around the world who were struggling like I was. And then it's why ultimately I went and wrote this book, because I've seen so many people just around the world who know what they need to do, but they're just not doing it. Whether they're stuck in fear, comparing themselves to others, like in that negative state, they're just not taking action. So I was like, you know what? I just want to pass on everything I know to help other people make the changes that I went through.
And that makes all the difference. It's that combination of learning and doing. And learning is an excellent step, but until we can add the doing, then we don't get the results. And so how beautiful to be able to put together a package of, if you're not doing, maybe here's why you're not doing. Let's look at why you're not doing it so that we can overcome it. And then it will become easier to do, to learn and to do. And I really appreciate what you've shared today. This is fantastic. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Yeah, this just plays a little bit onto what we were talking about a few minutes ago. And going back to like the 7 sections of the book, we go through 6 different areas, and ultimately it builds to section number 7, which is putting off your happiness. Because so often in life, we get pulled into things, we're busy, we convince ourselves that we can't be happy now. And that's why the book, it's taking readers on a point where they can start putting themselves first to go after the things that they want. And one of the biggest lessons I learned after my dad's cancer and my own journey and what I went through is that the harsh reality is far too many people are going to wake up at 65. They're going to look back at the life that they could have lived, the chances they didn't take, and they're going to be thinking, what if? And that's why for me, what hurts far more than failure, than rejection, than not being good enough is regret. And when you can start looking at life through the lens that you're going to regret the things that you don't do far more than the things that you do, it makes it so much easier to put yourself out there and go after what you want. Because you need to give up on your excuses about why it can't be done. You need to give up comparing yourself to others. And you need to give up just putting off the things that are going to make you happy. Because at the end of the day, you only have one life. And you need to start actually just putting yourself out there and making it the life that you will one day look back and be like, you know what, I went for what I wanted and I'm happy I did.
That is amazing. And I've heard it said that the number one, when people are on their deathbeds and you ask them about their life, it's regret of things they didn't do is what they are sad about. It's not, oh, I didn't make this much money, or, oh, I didn't do what mattered to me. I missed out. I lost my chance. And now it's too late. So thank you. Thank you for what you've shared. This message is so important. And I hope, again, as anyone who's listening, whatever age you're at, if you're 1 to 65, 65 to 99 plus, today is the first day to move forward. So you can make some changes today. Anyway, Byron, thank you so much. This has been a delight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by author Mark Goulston. He said, "You can't fix something until you admit it's broken." Today, I invite our listeners to recognize and admit to the self-sabotage and getting in our own way, and then let's give it up. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the Free Stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.